Happy Good Friday, everybody, and I have got some exciting stuff on the show today. But first and foremost, welcome, sir. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Mike Karickhoff, and I'm state representative in District 30, and enjoy being here with Chad this morning. I think we'll see how it goes.
Well, as always, I always tell people who my guests are, and I kind of open up the questions to see kind of what they'd like to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to dive into, you're not really from Kokomo, but what brought you to Howard County and Kokomo?
Well, I came to Kokomo first in 1984 to apply to be the superintendent of Parks and Recreation back in the day, as they say, when Steve Daly was mayor, and was fortunate to be hired and moved here and have lived here ever since, and really now consider myself a Kokomoian. It's my adopted home. It won't be leaving anytime soon.
And it's a great place, huh?
I love District 30. It's a microcosm of the state of Indiana. Agribusiness, manufacturing, healthcare, education. I mean, if you were to look at our state, Kokomo's a snapshot of our state, and it really is representative of the type of economies, the type of educational opportunities, and the values we hold in Indiana.
Sure. Well, what made you decide to get into politics in general?
You know, it was just kind of a natural evolution. I worked for Mayor Daley for his second term in office, and then Mayor Sargent took office, and I worked for Mayor Sargent as his park superintendent, and of course the park board by statute is a bipartisan, equal number of Democrats and Republicans on the board, and so you work for the mayor, but you also work for the park board, and so just got really engaged in the community with United Way, and of course knew every city council from the mid-'80s on, and you know, like 17 years, 18 years after coming, I got a phone call from Steve Daly asking me about a job at Ivy Tech. And so the opportunity to leave the college or leave the city park department came, and decided I'd take that opportunity. And I had worked too long and hard, had done too many things, had too many people that I really enjoyed being with to leave the city. So I decided I'd run for city council about a year after that, and got elected to city council, and did a couple of terms on the city council to continue my involvement with the city, and
making it what it is.
Yeah, and then one day just thought, well, was president of the city council, finance chair, understood how you know, government's complicated today, the various types of tax that are out there, and I had a pretty good understanding of it. Thought I'd give it a try at the state level. There were some things that had happened that I wasn't particularly thrilled with, that I thought was harming local government. I thought I'd get engaged and see what I could do to help, and I guess we'll see, if we're helping or not.
And now that you've mentioned being down in Indianapolis, you've dealt with a lot of tough issues down there. How do you deal with that pressure and all those, I'm sure, those other voices that are all around you? How do you deal with that?
Well, I pray a lot, truthfully. I mean, you've got to listen more than you talk, and be open to new ideas. I've never, since I've been an elected office holder now, really for over a decade, probably, between my city council and time in the General Assembly, you've got to recognize that you're there to represent your constituents, and so it's. Most people, I think, if they had the same information you had, would arrive at the same decision, would cast the same vote, but they don't always get the same information. So it's
because it's muddied a little bit, would you say?
Oh, yes, it's a little bit. That's putting it. You're being very politically correct, but people share certain types of information and not other types of information. So you want to listen to all of it, arrive at the best decision. I've always said sometimes you're a delegate. You're sent there to do the will of your constituent. They've delegated you to vote on their behalf, and sometimes you're a trustee. You're entrusted to do what's in their best interest. There are a lot of things that happen down there that people in Kokomo don't care about, but it does have some effect on them. So you're entrusted. You're a trustee to do what's best, and that's what I try to do. Determine when to be a delegate, when to be a trustee.
And this is one of the things that we've kind of stressed with other guests. The best way to get involved is to be knowledgeable and find out what is going on, because honestly, everything that you're doing down in Indianapolis is actually affecting us in some way. The best way to make best decisions is to be knowledgeable.
Right, and be open-minded. I mean, I remember when we started the smoking ban in Kokomo years ago. I kind of came from the position it's a business owner's business. It's his right to decide, and we're going to, there's no way I'd support a smoking ban. And I became educated on the issue, and the more I studied it, the more I understood, the more testimony I heard. I opened my eyes, and it became a workers' rights issue. And the people that work in those establishments have the right to breathe clean air, as do the other people there. And so, it ended up being a compromise. There was some carve-outs put in place to allow, bars to continue to do that, but restaurants, no. And so, those times on the council, I tried to be open-minded, learn about the issue, maybe change where I was at one time, and that's kind of how I try to handle all my issues down there.
And that's a good point, because it leads me kind of into my next question. Do you kind of vote with your conscience more, or try to make your constituents happy, or how do you get that balance? How do you make that?
Well, I can assure you that I'm not making my constituents happy. There's no question that they're not happy, because people don't contact you and say, gee, great job, you're doing wonderful, I really appreciate that vote. They expect you to represent them, and so that's the expectation. When you do something contrary to their wishes, they, of course, let you know.
They do? That's a surprise.
No, I think it's a mix. You determine the issue. I mean, there are certain things that are value-based. For example, the sanctity of life. I'm always going to fall on the side of pro-life decisions. There are other things that are constitutional. I'm always going to fall on the side of the Second Amendment. But then there are other things, tax policy issues, land use issues. A lot of inquiry right now about what's happening in Tipton County with the wind farms, and so I'm getting a lot of interest. It's really a local issue, but I've heard so much about it. I'm going to suggest to leadership that they need to look at this kind of from a global state perspective, because it does cross county boundaries.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of both sides, and I'm kind of wanting to have them come in as well. They're talking about things I would have never even thought about, with the ice falling off of the blades.
Blade flicker, all kinds of things. So again, it's something that we need to educate ourselves on. But that's just one issue, and there are hundreds of issues, and there aren't two sides to an issue. There are probably anywhere from 3 to 10 sides to an issue, because everybody has a little slightly different view on what we should or shouldn't be doing.
And going back to that, I guess you're going to have a lot of vocal people, and you're going to have a lot of people even probably mad, yelling, complaining, doing all of that stuff. How do you deal with that? I mean, that's got to weigh on you a little bit.
Well, I think if you maintain your composure and you soften your voice and you lower your voice, they're going to de-escalate and lower their behavior and tension towards you. There's a handful of people that I on occasion will vent to and share with them, my own frustrations, and likewise they share with me their frustrations. But for the most part, you got to listen to all of them, because if there's passion involved, there's really more than likely knowledge. Sometimes passion is accompanied by misinformation, but more times than not, a person that's real passionate about something probably has some knowledge or skin in the game. So you want to pay particular attention to their concern, whatever it may be. And we've had a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of contentiousness. Right now there's a lot of people on both sides of, do you expand gaming? Do you put the table games in the racinos? A lot of concern about how we phase out the inheritance tax. Do we expedite the phase out of the inheritance tax? There's even disagreement about, do we do the 10% income tax cut? And how good is it to be in a state where we actually are debating which tax to cut? Do we do the income tax? Do we do the inheritance tax? And somehow that's a terrible thing, but we're really in a very good position in Indiana and in the Midwest.
You would think that we would want to expedite that and not argue so much about it, but we're going to take a quick break, and I've got more questions. We'll be right back. Now, we've been talking about how people act and how they react to what you're doing down there, but what do you say to the media who actually maybe rake you across the coals, or maybe write those stories that you're not really fond of?
Well, for the most part, I've been fortunate to have good rapport with the media. look, I'm not a legislator that gets a whole lot of statewide media attention. Maureen Hayden has spent some time with me. I've enjoyed getting to her. Mary Beth Schneider. The ever popular Abdul Shabazz is a guy that is pretty well respected, has interesting view down there. But I don't think people understand how it just can totally envelope your life. Not just the media, but your colleagues, constituents, lobbyists. I would say probably about a fourth of the General Assembly commutes because, you know, our population base is near Indy. So I'd say about probably a fourth commute, and the other 75% stay down there either in condominium or hotel. Newer guys, newer people like myself stay in a hotel. So living out of a suitcase, you don't spend a lot of time in the hotel. It's not a glamorous, luxurious life by any stretch. If you think standing around a small, you know, 30-inch stand-up table is this,
where
you
you've
know,
arrived and you've made it.
that's not the case, because, you know, you're usually talking to people. Usually there's a handful from your area, whether they're lobbying for family and social services, for the YMCA, for county office holders are oftentimes down there to visit with you. Folks in the manufacturing industry. I've had union officials. I've had folks from E&B paving. There's a steady stream of people that visit with you, and the media kind of gets inserted in times. So yeah, it's been good. You just be honest and try to be genuine. If you don't know the answer, I don't know.
You know, you don't hear that much. Where if you don't know the answer, they just don't say.
Or I'll get back to you.
Sure.
And then do get back to them. It's just so very time consuming. So a lot of times you can't meet deadlines. I know locally that people are local media is frustrated with me because I can't get back to them when you're in town. Like when I was on the council, I think I was pretty well known for my transparency and accessibility. But down there, you're a little more insulated because when you're on the floor casting votes, I mean, you can do text messages and stuff, but I want to give thoughtful, correct answers, and that requires research, and that takes time.
And you don't want to be distracted by questions or...
And my time schedule down there is kind of not my own. The speaker controls your schedule, or the committee Chairman Brown on Ways and Means, or Speaker Bosma. They control, you know, how late you're going to work, what time you're going to start to work the next day, and you kind of squeeze
everything else in.
Exactly.
So what's been your toughest decision down there at the state level?
Well, there have been a lot of issues that have been, you know, prioritizing things on the budget. I'm trying to think of one that comes to mind. You know, everybody would think the right to work was a really tough vote. It really wasn't that tough a vote because I was there. It was certainly the most conspicuous, the most publicized, the most, you know, looked for. But as I listened to the people in District 30, it was very apparent to me, particularly the old boundaries of District 30, that people in Kokomo didn't support it, and I was going to be their delegate and cast that vote. But I'd say probably a more difficult vote was the mass transit vote, which doesn't affect Howard County. The morning after the right to work vote, in Ways and Means, they had to vote the mass transit language out that ultimately failed in the 2012 session and has passed the House in the 2013 session. That was a really tough vote because there were really competing interests. It wasn't a partisan vote at all. It was kind of philosophical. Do we want to provide this as a quality of life issue or not? And I did ultimately end up supporting it. Again, I don't believe it had any effect on Kokomo and Howard County, but that was a high pressure vote. And then locally, without a doubt, the smoking ordinance was the most attended, and because I had kind of come from one view on smoking and changed to a view that
another one.
And I'm so glad I didn't come out publicly and say I'm never going to vote to ban smoking, because I sure would have.
Wouldn't that actually make you look a little more human if you'd have said I'm never going to do this, and then all of a sudden you can say, hey, look, I actually did some investigating, I actually listened to these people, and now I have to change my.
You bring up a good point, but once you, I don't have the same luxury of changing my mind, because if you tell somebody something, they take it as the gospel truth, and that's the way you're going to be. So I don't have that luxury anymore. So
I'm glad I have that luxury.
I'm very careful. Yeah, my opinions don't always get to me. I try to really research something before I come out on the side of an issue.
Sure.
And
which is probably a good thing.
And it can change. You know, we pass something out of the House, and then it goes to the Senate, or you pass something out of the committee, and it goes to the floor, and it gets amended and changed. So, and today, the media is so good about disseminating information, you know, real time, lightning fast. Things can change, and it may take 24 hours to get a particular nuance of an education bill out, or a labor bill, or a tax policy bill, and suddenly you have, you know, your inbox is full of emails from bankers because they don't like this.
Sure.
And it never actually came out. It was just rumored to happen that way, or it came out of committee one way and you knew you were going to fix it on the floor, that kind of stuff.
Now, on the opposite end of the coin, do you have a favorite legislation or favorite piece of?
Well, the stuff I've been real excited about are the bills that I've been House sponsor. You know, Senator Banks has championed the curriculum development and course articulation, course transferability between institutions. Senator Banks, he's from around Fort Wayne. He has authored legislation every year, and I've been fortunate to be the recipient. The way it works is one chamber authors a bill, and then the other chamber kind of reviews it. We grade the paper. I like to call it grade the paper.
That's a great analogy.
Senator Banks, I've been the sponsor of several bills, and we have expanded greatly the ability to transfer college credits between IUK, Purdue, ISU, Ivy Tech, Indiana State, Evansville.
Which is a huge benefit for the student.
And even the private institutions, the Wabashes, the Manchesters, the private colleges are coming on board. About 50% of private institutions now want to participate and be part of it's called the Core Transfer Library. It's found on the Commission for Higher Education's website, Core Transfer Library, and it's growing exponentially. We just passed it out of the House with a 95-2 vote.
Wow.
And it's now will be sent back to the Senate. I'm advised by Senator Banks he'll concur with the changes made in the House, and it'll go to the governor. So, you know, by 2015, our ability to A, save parents and students money, and B, raise our educational attainment level. That's been exciting kind of statewide legislation I've had a hand in.
Because that's been in the news a lot lately about what our percentage of continuing education is, and how low it is, and how we compare to other states. This is actually going to benefit our numbers, correct?
Oh, and it's going to save families money. So
boosting the economy.
Right. The cost of higher education's you know, difficult for most families, and so this is something that's going to lower the cost, make it easier. How many people get discouraged when they try to transfer and they've taken 30 hours at one institution and they run out of money, and they can't, and they come back home and only, you know, 20 or 18 of their 30 hours transfer.
It's not cool.
And we're fixing that. So that's been exciting. And then I've got some other bills that, a lot of the budget stuff we do is exciting. Being able to generate a sustainable surplus, and to, you know, really be part of shifting the deficit spending pattern we're in to one that's, we did that in the city. I mean, the state didn't have the sales tax revenue generated. The city didn't have the property tax. You know, we made a lot of tough decisions, limiting the ambulance service. Those are tough, shutting down the daycare center. But look at the fiscal position our city's in now, and our county's done a great job. I sent you guys an op-ed piece about what a good job the county's done, reducing debt, running more efficiently, changing their status among other counties in terms of cost per taxpayer for core services. So.
And we touched on it a little bit before. I only have a couple more questions for you. Living out of a suitcase, how do you balance that home life versus state life?
Probably ask my wife and family. They'd probably tell you not very well is how I do it. But no, you just you know, Sunday evening you pack everything up, and you beat the Indianapolis traffic. You know, you leave very early. Go check in your hotel. I have a roommate. I share a room with another legislator to kind of help with expenses, and then you just go over to the Capitol, and you stay there all day. and usually pretty late in the night. Indianapolis has a really neat series of tunnels, underground tunnels between buildings. So even in the dead of winter, you rarely have to go outside.
Nice.
You can go, Circle Center Mall, you can go to the JW, you can go to the Marriott, the Westin. I mean, you can go just about anywhere in the tunnels. And so once you get in the Capitol, you just kind of hunker down and do your work, and usually get back in, depending on what time you get done voting, between 10 and midnight.
Wow.
And Monday and Tuesday and Thursday are session days. Wednesday's committee day. Being on Ways and Means, we meet a lot, and so you hear a lot of bills. I enjoy that because you learn about a lot of kind of nuanced bills, not not stuff that you read about in the paper a lot, but it's
gives you a little extra flavor.
Yeah, helps you learn. And then I wish I could say I got up every morning and walked 3 miles on the treadmill and lifted weights, and yeah, but it's just there's just not time for that, regretfully.
And lastly, I know state representative was a big accomplishment for you. Is that where it ends? Do you think there'll be something beyond that?
I'm almost 50.
President.
No, I'd just like to be president of my own household. No.
No. I know your wife.
I've been. There's a pretty steep learning curve, and I'm happy being on Ways and Means. If I could serve the citizens of District 30 for a few more terms, that would be probably the extent of it. I have my parents live in a different state, in West Virginia, and they're getting older. So I'm still young enough and have the aptitude to continue to learn. But this isn't something I'm not down there for 20 years. I don't have that much time, and no, I mean, we have good, responsible congressmen. I don't see myself doing anything at the federal level, and I just see myself continuing to work at the State House and fill that kind of niche.
Sure. Well, thank you for coming in today. I didn't get to all the questions, so I'm going to have you back in, and maybe we'll get into
it sometime.
If
You're a great interview. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you. If you guys, just as always, if you guys have questions that you want, Facebook me, tweet me, email me. I will be glad to get him back in the hot seat and ask him those questions. So thank you, sir, for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be right back.